Dream big. It was a rainy Tuesday morning. One of those days when the sky looks like it's been painted in shades of indecision. I sat by the window of my usual coffee shop, fingers curled around a warm cup, watching people rush past with umbrellas and purpose. I wasn't in a hurry. I hadn't been for weeks. I was stuck, trapped in a job that looked good on paper, but felt like a slow drip of life draining out of me. Every day, I played the role well, smiling, performing, pretending. I was successful by most standards, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was slowly disappearing inside a life I hadn't chosen for myself. That morning, a stranger sat next to me, an older man probably in his 70s with kind eyes and a book tucked under his arm. We exchanged polite nods, nothing more. But after a few minutes, he turned to me and said, "You look like someone carrying a question." It caught me off guard. I laughed and asked, "Do I?" He smiled. "I carried one for 40 years. It was always the same. What if I had tried? I didn't." And the question never let go. He didn't elaborate. He just sipped his coffee and returned to his book. But his words sank into me like water into dry soil. The next few days, I kept thinking about that conversation. At work, during meetings, even while brushing my teeth. I kept hearing, "What if I had tried?" And I started asking myself, what if I had tried? What if I finally chased the dream that had haunted me for years? The one I had always shoved aside in favor of stability. You see, I'd always wanted to be a writer. Not just someone who writes in the shadows after a 9 to 5, but someone who lives through words, whose stories breathe life into others. But I never pursued it seriously. I feared judgment, failure, and most of all, regret. But something shifted. I started writing again, not for money or approval, just for the joy of it. I wrote late at night, in the morning before work, and even during lunch breaks in the park. Slowly, that dream began to feel less like a fantasy and more like a direction. And then came the leap. It wasn't glamorous. I saved for months, made a plan, and eventually left my job. People called me brave, some called me foolish. But deep down, I knew I was finally the main character in my own life. The journey wasn't smooth. Rejections came. Self-doubt visited often. But each step was mine, and in that ownership, I found a strange kind of freedom. One afternoon, months later, I returned to that same coffee shop. I never saw the old man again, but I whispered a silent "thank you" to the empty chair beside me. His one sentence had changed my life. Here's what I've learned. Playing it safe might seem smart, but it's the slowest way to lose yourself. We spend so much of our lives following expectations that we forget to follow our instincts. But in the end, what stings the most isn't the dream that didn't work. It's the one we never dared to try. So take the risk. Speak the truth. Start the thing. Say yes. Say no. Be bold. Because regret lingers longer than failure ever will. You get one story. Make sure you're the one writing it.